Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris killed 13 people and injured 24 others before turning the guns on themselves.
Has brutally killed people in such a horrific way.
One of the people who ran from the school that day, State Rep Kevin Parker of Spokane, a youth life leader at the time. He was having lunch with a student in the cafeteria when Klebold and Harris began the massacre. Today, he is determined to stop the violence.
State Representative Kevin Parker hopes to do just that with House Bill 2823, a bill he says is meaningful and emotional for him.
Primarily because on April 20th, I was inside the school having lunch with a student when the shooting began, so there is some level of firsthand experience that I've had.
The bill would encourage students who might hear a rumor of a planned attack to speak up. They'd be able to make an anonymous report, and that information gets passed on to school officials and law enforcement.
Those rumors are sometimes fact. That's the whole purpose of this bill. Because going back to Columbine, what we suspected was there was not a strong communication between school authorities and the police.
A shooting at a school, the 31st of this year. One student was killed, 3 others wounded.
And Clayton Sandell joined us tonight. Clayton, you're hearing the school held a security drill there just yesterday?
That's right, David. Like all schools these days, this school did practice lockdown drills. The last one was just yesterday. We're also hearing from students who thought today was another drill, but of course, turned out to be the real thing.
With students describing the scene as bloody and chaotic. Authorities say sophomore Caleb Sharp came to school on the bus in the morning armed with 2 weapons in his duffel bag, a rifle and a handgun. They say just after 10 a.m. he opened fire, shooting 1 student in the head and killing him and injuring 3 other teenage girls. The whole thing lasted only about a minute before he was taken down by a school custodian.
I turned around and I saw him, and he was just going, and he was completely passive, and he was just shooting, and he shot one young man, and then I crouched down onto the floor, and I'm pretty sure he shot the ceiling, and then he shot the girl next to me, and she fell down, and as everyone was running, I could just hear her screaming, "Help me," and she was screaming, help me," over and over.
Eyewitnesses say when Sharp's first gun jammed, a student approached him to try and intervene. He was shot in the head and killed. Then a custodian stepped in and tackled Sharp. Both are being hailed as heroes this morning. Investigators are still trying to figure out a motive, but some students told local reporters the shooter was obsessed with school shooting documentaries. Authorities are also combing through social media accounts, which allegedly show him and his friends acting out violent scenes with guns. There are also reports at the beginning of the year the shooter had written notes to other students threatening that he would be doing something stupid. So you can only imagine the fear that has gripped that community.
And good morning, Robin. You can see a small memorial has started outside the high school here this morning. Police and paramedics got here almost immediately after the shooting started. And remarkably, they had just practiced for this type of incident the day before.
He was carrying a duffel bag. He set it down and pulled it out and started shooting.
One student confronting the shooter.
He went to his next weapon. A student walked up to him, engaged him, and that student was shot. That student did not survive.
The gunman then shot 3 more students before a custodian stopped him. He was taken into custody but is not being identified because he's a juvenile. Classmates say there were signs the shooter was troubled.
They were threatening things that he said to me that I would rather not share since authorities and stuff.
He was handing out notes to his friends, and it said that he was going to do something stupid to where either might get him killed or in jail.
Students say they told school counselors, but this morning it's not clear what was done.
I always thought like this was such a great school and you never would think anything like this would ever happen here, but it definitely can happen anywhere.
An active shooter call came in at 10 a.m., sending officers racing to this high school.
He attempted to fire 1 weapon, it jammed. He went to his next weapon. A student walked up to him, engaged him, and that student was shot. That student did not survive.
Chaos erupted after 10 a.m. at Freeman High School just outside Spokane. High school freshman Elisa Vigil was on that second floor watching the shooter take aim.
I just remember I crouched down and the girl next to me, she fell and I just could hear her screaming and screaming. She had been shot. I had gotten on the bus and I sat down with my friend and we were laughing. A boy behind me was telling jokes and stuff. And the boy in front of me, he was laughing, telling jokes, and he rides my bus. I've talked to him before. And then I didn't think that in 30 minutes, so that he would be dead, because it was the same boy who shot that was riding my bus, and I'd seen him, he was laughing, he was a regular person, and 30 minutes later he had passed. It was horrifying. He was rather outgoing. I think he got an award in acting before, and I didn't think at all. I had come into school, I just gotten off the bus, and I was about to go put my things in my locker. I have a bottom locker, and I heard a loud pop, and I turned around and I saw him, and he was just going, and he was completely passive, and he was just shooting, and he shot one young man, and then I crouched down onto the floor, and I'm pretty sure he shot the ceiling, and then he shot the girl next to me, and she fell down, and as everyone was running, I could just hear her screaming, "Help me," and she was screaming, help me," over and over, and I just stayed down, and like maybe a minute or so passed, and I looked back up, and the hallway was empty, and my legs were all dusty from where he shot the ceiling, and the girl next to me, she was bleeding. She'd been shot in the back, and I looked to my left, and there was the boy he had shot. I looked to my right, and there down the hall there was another boy, someone I assumed that was shot, and a little while away next to next classroom I could see the pistol that he'd used, and it was very scary, very surreal, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I thought, well, not my school, surely.
He was in my second period drama class, actually. He played golf on our golf team last year, and I didn't really like hang out with him a lot, or but he seemed kind of like he was a nice kid from what I saw.
I just hear this loud bang. I thought it was like someone popped something.
The thing that kept going through my head was run, just go.
He went to his next weapon. A student walked up to him, engaged him, and that student was shot.
This girl says her cousin was hit in the side.
We don't know if it's lodged in her spine or her colon. We don't know yet.
One student died. 3 more were wounded.
They're stable at this point. One will be requiring some surgery later this afternoon.
But a friend tells reporters he had been watching documentaries about school shootings.
Even if you know your kid's okay, you still know they went through something today. You still know that their friends might not be okay.
He says he was in a drama class with the shooter and would have even been on the same bus. As for the student who died,
he was in the grade below me, and I was shocked. Our coach came and said, "This is real." Went into the back coach's room, stayed there for a while until we got escorted out.
The sheriff says a teenage student came to Freeman High School Wednesday morning heavily armed. He tried to fire one gun, but it jammed.
He went to his next weapon. A student walked up to him, engaged him, and that student was shot. That student did not survive.
Tristan Christ was there.
It just sounded like pretty much a huge firecracker going off in the hall. I just saw, and then the 3 flashing lights of it going off right at the kid's head, point blank.
Officials have not released the name of the suspect seen here in handcuffs. NBC is not identifying him because he's a juvenile. But Michael Harper says he knows the shooter.
One of my best friends brought a gun in a duffel bag to school.
But the sheriff says the suspect may have brought the guns to the school because of a bullying situation.
We need to figure out what's gone wrong with our society, that our children decide that they need to take weapons to deal with the issues that they're facing.
Just one day before the shooting, this school held a lockdown drill to prepare for this exact situation. Officials say that may have helped save many lives.
I dropped my daughter off at school, and she sent me a text and said there was a lockdown and that they told her to run. She told me that you can't come up here because, of course, because there's so much going on. We're so sad that this happened, and of course I was frightened beyond belief.
These are senseless and tragic events that really don't need to happen.
Sheriff Knezevich says a potential motive might be taking shape.
Sounds like a case of a bullying type of situation.
I'm just shocked. I didn't think that anything like this would ever happen at Freeman.